Let us begin by reading the word problem out loud. 5 magicians were hired for a birthday party. The parents paid each magician $75 for their act. How much did the parents spend in total? Now, the first step in our strategy for problem solving is always to analyze the problem. So let's go ahead and reread it and see what information we can extract from the given sentences. First off, we want to determine what it is that we want to find. In this case, we want to look for the question being asked. That's what we want to answer. So the question in this problem is, how much did the parents spend in total? So once we know what it is we want to answer, we know what it is we want our variable to represent. So we could actually jump just straight into step 2 and assign a variable. So the question we want to answer is, how much did the parents spend in total? Therefore, we're going to go ahead and assign our variable to b. We could use the letter x, and therefore x is going to equal the amount the parents spent in total for the 5 magicians. Again, our assigning of the variable is basically just the question being asked, reworded in the form of a statement. So let us continue analyzing the problem. We know 5 magicians were hired for a birthday party. And we also know that the parents paid each magician $75 for their act. So let's suppose we only hired one magician. Just one. If we hired one, then the parents would be paying $75 for that one magician. If we hire 2 magicians, then the parents would be paying $75 for each magician. So it'd be 75 plus 75. Luckily for us, we have another way to write that. We could write that using multiplication. And the equivalent form of writing that is going to be 2, which is the number of magicians that were hired, times the pay for each magician, which is 75. Similarly, if we hired 3 magicians, then the parents would be paying a total of 75 for the first magician, 75 for the second magician, and lastly, 75 for the third magician. So now again, we can write that using addition, but we have a simpler method using multiplication. That would simply be 3, which is the number of magicians, multiplied by the rate per magician, which is again $75. So now, following this ideology, we want to be able to form an equation. However, instead of 1, 2, or 3 magicians, we want to incorporate using 5 magicians. So our equation is going to be the number of magicians that were hired for the birthday party, which is 5. And we're going to multiply that by the rate per magician, which is 75. And this is going to be equal to the total price the parents would have paid for all 5 magicians, which again is represented by a variable x. So again, there's 5 magicians, so we're going to multiply 5 by the rate per magician, which is going to be 75. And therefore, we have our equation. Now let's go ahead and solve this equation. So we'll have 5 times 75, which is equal to x. So ideally, all we really need to do is simplify the left-hand side, 5 times 75, because on the right-hand side, our variable is already completely isolated by itself. So let's go ahead and do that off to the side of scratch work. We'll do 75 times 5. 5 times 5 gives us 25, so we'll bring down the 5 and we'll add 2. So now we'll have 5 times 7, which is 35. But when you add the 2 from above, you get 37. So we end up with 375. Therefore, 5 times 75 simplifies out to $375. And that's going to be equal to our variable x. So now that we know the value of x, let's actually state our conclusion clearly. Now the question to be answered was, how much did the parents spend in total? And the way we're going to state our conclusion is going to be directly based off of that. So we're going to have the amount the parents spent in total for the 5 magicians is $375. Again, that is a question reworded in the form of a statement. The last step is we're going to go ahead and check our results. So again, we always begin with the original equation found in step number 3. So it's going to be 5 times 75 equals our variable x. However, we now know what our variable x represents numerically, and we know that to be 375. So all we need to do on the left-hand side is multiply 5 by 75. Luckily for us, we already did that as scratch work on the side, and we know 5 times 75 is equal to 375. So therefore, we're just going to go ahead and carry that on down. So we have 375 on the left of the equal sign, and 375 on the right-hand side of the equal sign. And the question is, are they indeed equal? Is 375 equal to 375? And yes, it is. So therefore, our solution is correct.